Hello, and welcome to our contrastive analysis of Italian and English presentation. Presented by Shane Flanagan, Melanie O'Connor, and Michelle Phillips.
The Italian language developed through a moderate process that began after the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century. Prior to this fall, Latin was the language that was used throughout Italy, and the term lingua franca was used to describe it. Following the fall of the empire, vernacular and local forms of the language began to pose a vital role in society. Italian as we know it today, the standard use of it, begins in the 1600s. However, illiteracy was quite common until around the 1950s, so as a result, regional dialects were used in order to communicate effectively. So overall, the language of Italian went through a long process, and it was more verbally communicated rather than written.
The Italian writing system. The alphabet of the Italian language is composed of 21 letters, including 5 vowels and 16 consonants. Compared to English, there are no letters J, K, W, X, and Y. The only Italian words where these consonants can be found are of foreign origin, mostly coming from English, including words like jazz and yogurt. Some exceptions are names of cities and people, including the name Jacopo, spelled Jacopo.
We're going to be talking about the background of the regional varieties that are seen in the Italian language. The Italian language is based in the dialect of Florence. There are 34 dialect variations found across Italy. The most common dialects are found in northern, central, and southern Italy. These will be explored further on in the presentation. It is important to note that in the last 50 years, many regional dialects such as Tuscany, Lombardy, Veneto, Naples, and Sicily have entered the national Italian language. This just shows how the Italian language is constantly evolving, allowing different dialects into the language. We are going to first talk about the northern dialects. Northern dialects have many different regional languages spoken, and they can be found in the northern parts of Italy. These regions are Lombardy, Veneto, Piedmont, Liguria, and Emilia-Romagna. Lombardy uses definite article L instead of il. Veneto features diphthongs and uses stress on the Palentian syllable. Piedmont includes French-derived words and has complex verb conjugation. Liguria has strong maritime influences and features nasaled vowels, whereas Emilia-Romagna features multiple forms of plurals and subject pronouns. All of these differences found in northern dialects make the northern dialects unique to the northern parts of Italy. And while these dialects share some similarities with standard Italian, they are distinct from it and exhibit their own unique grammar, vocabulary, and punctuation, which really gives it its uniqueness to the northern part of Italy. The next region that we're going to be talking about in Italy is Tuscan and Central dialects. Tuscan and Central dialects are spoken in Central Italy, mainly in Tuscany. These dialects share similar phonetic, grammatical, and lexical features that make them mutually intelligible to some extent. There are 4 dialects: Frenzy, Pisa, Lucca, and Prato. The Tuscan dialect has a rich history. It is considered one of the most prestigious Italian dialects. It influenced several literary works during the Renaissance period, including Dante's The Divine Comedy and There's a family named the Medici family of Florence that supported the spread of Tuscan literature, which has made a significant impact on the development of modern standard Italian language. The final region that we'll be looking at is Southern and Extreme Southern dialects. Southern and extreme Southern dialects include dialects spoken in the southernmost parts of Italy, including its mainland and the islands that surround it, such as Sicily. These dialects have several distinct features that make them unique from the other Italian dialects, and even mutually unintelligible among themselves. These dialects include Abruzzo, Calabria, Naples, and Sicily. Abruzzo uses the letter I instead of R. Calabria uses double consonants. Naples prefers to drop their final vowels. And Sicily uses U instead of O.
Italian phonology. There are 21 letters corresponding to 21 graphemes and 28 phonemes. The 5 vowels, A, E, I, O, U, are expressed with 7 phonemes. While the vowels A, I, U always have the same open sound, the vowels E and O have an open or closed accent. English phonology. In contrast to the Italian phonology, this phonology is a very complex system with over 40 distinct phonemes, including 5 vowel sounds and 24 consonant sounds. It's also important to point out that English phonology includes a stress-timed rhythm, where stress syllables tend to occur at regular intervals.
I'm going to be looking at the English and Italian morphology, the similarities and differences. We're first going to be looking at the similarities. In English and Italian, verbs both indicate tense, mood, subject, and number. For example, I have shown how the verb to eat is conjugated in Italian in the present tense. In Italian, you can also conjugate to eat in the past and future tense as well. The same can be done in English with eat, eaten, and will eat. We can also have similarities in verb pluralization. I've given the example of the word book and how in Italian, by substituting the O at the end, which makes the word singular, and changing the O to an I, which makes the word plural, the word has not changed, but rather just been modified by changing the ending. The word stays the same. The ending just changes, similar to in English when we add an S at the end of a singular word. We can also look at verb morphology, which directly influences sentence structure in Italian and English, determining how sentences are formed and understood. Like I was talking about with the conjugations of verbs affects not only the verb itself, but how other words within the sentence can relate to it. So we look at you eat the pizza, and when we conjugate it to do you eat the pizza, there is really no change. It is very similar to English as well. Now looking at the differences. In Italian, nouns are gendered. This is not the same as in English. In Italian, nouns are either male or female. Adjectives are also different. Adjectives agree with the gender and number when they are modified. So we look at the word beautiful, and we see it as bello when it's not modified, and bella when modifying it, because it is a feminine noun. We can also change the ending to agree with the gender of the noun that is described, as I was talking about with bellow and bella. Pronouns and articles are also vary according to the gender and number of the nouns they refer to. There are multiple subtenses when conjugating a verb compared to English, like I was talking about. Even though it is similar, Italians do have the tense, the future tense, which is not seen in English. Then we can also look at negative sentences, which are by incorporating the word none before the verb. This just showcases how the verb positioning helps clear up the expression of the negative that is tied to in the verb position. So in Italian, they would say non lo mangio. In English, we would say I do not eat. So we do not have to add a word in front of our verb. We just have a complete sentence of saying I do not like.
Syntax is a set of rules, principles, and processes that govern the structure of sentences, including how words and phrases are arranged to convey specific meanings. Focusing on the Italian language itself, there's an order of subject, verb, object. However, Italian has a strong inflectional system, meaning there's a more flexible sentence structure. The key parts about Italian syntax include adjectives. Adjectives must agree with the gender of the nouns, so feminine or masculine. Adjectives must precede or follow the noun they describe. Gender and number of the noun can change in definite and indefinite articles. And the pronouns must be attached to either infinitives, gerunds, and imperatives. An example of the way the order of an adjective can affect an Italian sentence would be un grande uomo, which means a great man, and un uomo grande, which means a big man. Grande within each sentence has a different meaning based on the position it's in. Moving from Italian syntax to English syntax, it is extremely important the difference in flexibility with sentence structure. Italian is a lot more flexible than English is. Pronouns are extremely important within the English language, especially in sentence structure, a lot more important than Italian. Pronouns and object pronouns in the English language are used to refer to people and things that may have been already mentioned or understood. Object pronouns are used when the pronoun is the object of the action. Unlike Italian, English syntax directly depends on pronouns. Within English language, there are different types of sentences. The four main ones are declarative, interrogative, imperative, and exclamatory. Like Italian, English sentences can become compound sentences with the use of conjunctions, such as and. Within Italian, it would be e.
Italian semantics. Let's take a look at homonymy and polysemy. Just like in English, many Italian words have multiple meanings, or sound the same but have different meanings. For instance, the word penna can mean pen or feather, depending on the context. Cavallo primarily means table as a piece of furniture, but it can also refer to a discussion table or negotiation setting, such as al tavolo delle trattative, at the negotiation table. Pesca can mean peach, as in the fruit, or fishing, as in the activity. For example, ho mangiato una pesca, I ate a peach, and oggi andiamo a pesca, today we are going fishing. Moving on. Many words in Italian are derived from Latin, and their meanings have evolved over time. Understanding Latin roots can help in grasping the semantic connections between Italian words. Padre comes from the Latin pater, meaning father. This root is shared with many other Romance languages and is the basis for related words such as patrimonio, heritage, and patria, homeland or fatherland. Another example is the Italian word corpo, as it is a direct descendant of the Latin word corpus, meaning body. This root is also found in many other words. Jumping across, idiomatic expressions. Italian has many idiomatic expressions that don't translate literally but have understood meanings within the culture. For instance, the very popular expression, in bocca al lupa, literally translates in the mouth of the wolf, but culturally translates to good luck. Lastly, let's take a look at articles and gender. The use of definite articles, il, la, lo, le, and gile, and gendered nouns in Italian affect meaning. For example, il fine, the end, versus la fine, the purpose. This is a demonstration of how even a small change in articles can alter meaning significantly. English semantics. As previously explained, many Italian words change meaning based on context. Many English words have multiple meanings depending on context as well. For instance, bank can refer to a financial institution or the side of a river. I need to go to the bank, versus we sat on the bank of the river. English also has words that are spelled the same but have different meanings, even if they are not pronounced the same. Tear, to rip, versus tear in reference to crying. Both Italian and English are influenced by Latin, but Italian tends to preserve Latin forms more directly, while English has been influenced by a wider range of languages, including Germanic and French. Many English words come from Latin, especially in formal, academic, and scientific contexts. The word father comes from the Old English fader, which is related to Latin pater. English also borrows heavily from other languages, so word origin can be more diverse. English has a wide range of idiomatic expressions that doesn't translate literally. For example, break a leg means good luck, similar to the Italian in bocca al lupo, as explained earlier. In contrast to Italian, English nouns are not gendered, and the definite article is always the, regardless of the noun's number or gender. For example, the table singular versus the tables plural.
I'm going to be talking about the similarities and differences within English and Italian grammatics. We're first going to be looking at English. In the English language, we use language to greet, inform, demand, promise, and request. This is what we call language function. For example, when someone says, "Hi there, how are you?" that is a greeting that is common in the English language. Whereas the statement, "The bone is 5,000 years old," is to inform the listener. Also in English, we change our language based on the listener or situation, really focusing on changing our language for children, friends, emergencies, and any background knowledge that we may know about the person. Word choice is very important in the English language, again, especially when we are talking to our friends, teachers, and families. Talking about changing language based on the listener, we really try to be very calm in very serious situations. We do not want to be telling somebody something that is very serious by yelling and freaking out. We like to use a nice calm tone, gentle words, to not provoke, upset, or scare the person that we are giving upsetting information to. It is also important to remember with word choice that in English we would not be using the same exact words that we would use with our friends when we talk to our bosses or our higher ups in work or school. And finally, we follow norms of conversation and storytelling, this being taking turns, adding detail, asking questions, and using physical language. It is not uncommon to be in a conversation in English and have the person that you're having a conversation with ask a follow-up question to a statement that you have said. Or it's also not uncommon for conversations in English to work with the person A speaking, then person B speaking, and just going back and forth, taking turns and letting each person have their full thought heard. This differs a little bit with Italian. In Italian, it is not uncommon to be having a one-sided conversation. Italians tend to speak a lot and really want to get their thoughts out before anyone else can get their thoughts out. So that sometimes leads the listener to have to dissect what the person was saying to them and be able to come up with questions from the first part of the conversation, have a comment for the second part, and then be able to make another comment about the last part and be able to follow the conversation, which can be quite hard. But it is very important that in Italian language you let Italians finish their full statement. That is seen as being polite, and it creates a harmonious situation within conversation. Talking about conversation and how Italian conversations are a little different from English, we talked about how in English language we use English to make requests. Italians do the same thing, but it's more indirect. They do not outright tell you what the problem is. They will say what the problem is in a more sly way without actually expressing it. So if they do not like something that they order at a restaurant, they're probably not going to tell the waiter right away that they don't like it. They'll probably say that it was okay because they don't want to be seen as being impolite and being disrespectful to the chef that has worked so hard to make their meal. This is the same thing as making indirect requests as well. They're not going to directly ask somebody for an extra napkin if they need one. They will probably find a way to bring it up in conversation without actually having to ask somebody for a napkin. And then finally, looking at speech acts. Like I was saying, in the Italian language, people make requests, give orders, and make promises, which can function both as a request and a polite interaction. It really just depends on the situation that is going on within the conversation or even before the conversation. So it's very important to being aware of your surroundings when having a conversation with somebody in Italian.
One clear similarity between the English language and the Italian language is some discourse varieties. For example, formal language is not commonly used in Italian, and it depends on the conjunction of pronouns, verbs, and phrases. This conjunction depends on the relationship between the person speaking and the person they are speaking to. For example, in a formal setting, somebody may say lei to show respect. This is only used in a formal situation with somebody that the person speaking does not know. Informal language is most commonly used in Italy. Informal language can be seen in everyday social settings with friends, family, co-workers, and etc. Informal language in Italian is shown through conjunction of verbs, pronouns, and phrases. An example of this would be in an informal situation when one wants to ask how someone is doing, they would say, ciao, come stai? But in a professional setting, they would not say that. Within English, formal language is a lot more commonly seen in writing or polite situations. Proper grammar is used, such as full names, punctuation, pausing, pronunciation, and etc. Informal language is rather spoken. Informal language is used every day, and is used to communicate rather than inform and abide by grammatical rules. So this is just everyday conversation or text that we see this. Slang is used when a subgroup describes new ideas or words that may have alternate meanings. Slang is used within informal language conversations as well as with technology. So this may be one issue when working with Italian and English. The slang that's used in English is not commonly seen in Italian. Social dialects are used within English, specifically African American vernacular English. New words and phrases are created, like slang, to have new meanings.
Take a look at difficulties that Italian speakers may have with English. Many Italian speakers, when learning English pronunciation, often encounter recurring challenges with the H sound, TH sound, and R sound. Italian lacks the H sound, making it unfamiliar territory for learners. As a result, Italian speakers often exclude the H sound in the initial position of words and incorrectly insert it where it's unnecessary. Many Italian speakers also tend to struggle with the TH sound, often leading to the incorrect substitution of T or D sounds in the words. This frequent misstep can blur the line between three and tree, or this and this. Italian speakers also can struggle with the English R sound, as it greatly differs from the sound in Italian. In Italian, the R is rolled, while in English it requires flipping the tip of your tongue gently towards the roof of the mouth without rolling it. Let's move on to aspirated consonants. There are considerable differences between Italian and English when it comes to aspirated consonants, like P, T, and K. Italian speakers frequently overlook aspiration while pronouncing English words, since it is absent in Italian, but English speakers employ it. The common yet erratic ed endings in English stand in stark contrast to the phonetic Italian language, where words are pronounced as they are spelled. Italian speakers are frequently confused by this linguistic disparity, especially as English offers 3 different pronunciations for ed endings, none of which are phonetic. The following variations present challenges. After voiced speech sounds, such as in words played, ed is frequently pronounced as d. After unvoiced consonants, such as the word hoped, ed is frequently pronounced as t. And after t, a, or d, such as in required or desired, ed is pronounced with an ihd sound. Our final difficulty that we're going to address here is the tendency to incorrectly add vowel sounds to the end of words. While Italian words typically end in vowels, English has a large number of examples of words with consonants in the final position. Because this is less common in Italian, native Italian speakers may occasionally add a final vowel sound to the end of the words when speaking English because it fits with their linguistic preferences. Communication rules. Starting with emotional tone. Italians are known for their passionate way of speaking, often using animated speech patterns, variations in tone, and emotional inflection to emphasize their points. Italians sometimes exaggerate for effect, using hyperbole in conversations to make their stories more vivid or interesting. Directness. Italians can be relatively direct, especially in casual settings or among friends. However, this directness is softened by humor or warmth. Italians will often give honest opinions, but expect the conversation to remain lively and not overly formal. In more formal or business environments, especially in northern Italy, communication tends to be more diplomatic and indirect. Politeness is valued, and criticism may be softened to avoid confrontation. Relationships. Building and maintaining personal relationships is central to Italian communication. Italians often prefer face-to-face communication over written or electronic forms, particularly when discussing important matters. Small talk and pleasantries are expected before getting to the point. Italians are known for their warmth and hospitality, especially when interacting with guests or newcomers. They place a high value on being friendly and accommodating. Small talk. Italians enjoy talking about food, family, and sports, particularly soccer. These topics are often used as icebreakers in casual conversations. Politics, religion, and personal finances may be considered sensitive subjects, especially in initial conversations or with people outside of one's close circle. Conversation style. It is common for Italians to speak over one another or interrupt during conversations, especially in animated or passionate discussions. This is not considered rude, but rather a sign of engagement and enthusiasm. Conversations in Italy tend to move quickly, especially in informal settings. People are often eager to express their thoughts, leading to dynamic exchanges where multiple people may talk at once. In formal settings, Italians tend to respect hierarchical structures, allowing those of higher status to speak first and leading the conversation. This difference is particularly evident in businesses and academic contexts. Indirect communication. Italians often rely on the context of a conversation, including nonverbal cues, social relationships, and shared experiences to convey meaning. This means that much of what is communicated is implied rather than directly stated. Italians may avoid direct confrontation in certain situations, particularly with superiors or in formal settings. Instead, they may use humor, irony, or indirect language to express disagreement or criticism.
Expressions and gestures, eye contact, and social distance are all three major components of nonverbal behaviors we see in Italian culture. Oftentimes, within this culture, people will talk face to face, touch during conversation, and sit very close. To someone who is not from this culture, avoiding this distance or this touching, it may be viewed as rude and disrespectful. So, for example, if I were to travel to Italy and an Italian person were to speak to me and they're very close to me and I'm trying to move away from them, that would be seen as very disrespectful and rude to them. Eye contact is also very important. Direct eye contact is the social norm during conversation. However, staring at somebody that you are not in a conversation with is seen as quite disrespectful. The most common thing that we see in Italy would be hand gestures. Oftentimes, people will emphasize their points with their hands. Italians use their hands and facial expressions to get their point across. Oftentimes, they will react with just their hands. Some examples of these reactions might be a chin flick, which means not interested, or putting their hands on their hips, which means I don't know.
I'm going to be talking about Italian underlining norms/values in communication. We are first going to be looking at greetings. Italians are renowned for their warm and friendly nature when it comes to greetings. Italians, when they meet someone new for the first time, they will extend a handshake accompanied by genuine eye contact to show that they are interested in getting to know you. When they are among friends and not as new acquaintances, a delightful tradition that they follow is they will give light kisses on both cheeks, beginning with the left. This is observed as a warm and friendly greeting. Next, conversations. Italians are renowned for their passionate conversations. They love to speak with their hands and be able to be free with the way that they express themselves. These gestures can be seen as calm when talking about neutral and calming conversations. They can also be used to show aggression when Italians are angry and frustrated. But when it comes to conversations, it is important that we practice sensitivity when talking about politics and religions with Italians, such as we do here in America. Unless this is a close friendship with someone or the Italian person themselves initiate the conversation. But as a rule of thumb, try to stay away from sensitive topics to keep an open line of communication. Finally, touch and affection. Within a family and close friendships, it is not uncommon to see Italians hugging and kissing on the cheek or even gentle touches during conversation to show that they are listening and that they understand and care about you. It is also not uncommon for Italians to be interacting with children via physical contact, such as hugs and kisses on the cheeks as well. This is seen as normal, and for them, it would be weird if that was not how they interacted with children. I will be talking about the impact of communication styles in the classroom. For students that are from Italy, in the classroom, the norms of emotional tone, small talk, directness, facial expressions, and close relationships would work really well for them. Classrooms that have a setting that has a family feel to it and really focuses on community would also be very beneficial for these students. It's very important that these students have a teacher that has an expressive teaching style as well. Italian students would excel in the classroom doing activities such as turn and talk with a little redirecting to ensure they stay on task and are communicating appropriately. They would also be very successful in discussions with guidance on polite listening and being mindful of facial expressions, as well as not talking over their partners. Finally, Italian students would excel in group projects because group projects allow them to create a community that they've already been used to creating for their culture of a family feel. Group projects would allow for them to also be able to practice their polite listening, their ability to be able to compromise and listen to other people's ideas as well.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our contrastive analysis presentation as we looked at the similarities and differences between English and Italian.